not elongating these things to the north, or probably just the south too. Why is it actually to us Yorubas in our own region? They live there. They actually just, I think at times, Igbos carry out some kind of like maybe boycott towards the Yorubas on our own region. So how did we get here? Like, how we should I call it we being so weak that this actually just happening? Like, I don't know. I just wanted to clarify me or probably just illustrate that to me because I'm really curious to know. Yeah, because it's not happening in the north. So why?
Let me say it this way: what is happening in the west today has happened in south, it has happened in the north. Let's first make that very clear. Everything, and with all due respect to the moderate and wise Igbos, the truth of the matter is this: what the Igbos are doing in the southwest and on social media was done in the north and also in the south. The only difference is that they haven't. There's something called Yorùbá máa ń pè tí ó máa gugi kọjá ewé ó kù tíntìní kan débẹ̀. Well, it was the same generation in the south and the north, but this ones in the west, maybe they don't know what happened then. So what usually happens is that they would do it again and again and again, sometimes for weeks, sometimes for months, sometimes for a while, and then the people will come back. Let me just explain. Overstepping, thank you. Let me give you an example. In the 30s and in the 40s specifically, a lot of Igbos moved into the south area. For example, River State. What I'm about to say right now, you'll find it in the book by Elechi Amadi. It's called Sunset in Biafra. A lot of them moved in, but like I said when I was reading that book here, like because of the sheer number, there were so many, they overran the entire place, and then they had no reason to assimilate because they were more than the owners of the land. Whether it was in Calabar or in the Ogoja province or in Rivers area, they were more, and so they dominated naturally, not because they were bad people, but because they were more. And it was so bad that the people of the land had to learn their language. As at the time the book was written in 73. It was written in 1973. As at that time, according to Elechi Amadi, at least 2 ethnic groups in the Rivers area were already losing their languages, and they were speaking, according to him, a form of pidgin Igbo. They were overrun because they were not as many. So your teachers were Igbo because they were they were more than any other group of people. The Bible you used was in Igbo language because it was the language that was used most widely by everyone. The prayer book was in Igbo. All those things, they were used to that, and of course they had political power in that area from 1939, especially from 1952. Right, they had political power. That's why the father was a Yoita. By 53, was already consolidated. You had Azikiwe as the premier of the East. So that gave them that thing of, we've conquered this place, of course, until the war. And I'm not going to get into it, but we'll get into it much later. There's a reason the South deals with them the way they do, to the point where if you say you're an Igbo, for instance, you're Ikwere and you call yourself Igbo, the Ikwere man sees you as a very stupid person. I've heard them say it. I've watched the interviews. I've listened to them. I've read books. By the way, Elechi Amadi himself is an Ikwere man, and he made it very clear as in 1973 that they had their own association different from Igbo World Congress that the Igbos had in the 40s and 50s, and that even after Ironsi banned all tribal parties, their own group, they were still meeting. And now they have to assert that, listen, we are different, because they notice the tendencies. And now there's one of the examples that was given by Dr. Kalu, where he mentioned how the way the Igbos in their area got into the area, they were not indigenous to that space. So during just before independence and in the First Republic, you have to read that report to understand the way they were. Don't use the word, but it's the truth. That's what they called it. They called it oppression. And so they now push back and took over the land. For instance, houses, it was called abandoned properties. There's a story behind that one. But by the time they were done dealing with them economically, they now started pushing back, right? So now Igbos are very careful when it comes to South, especially River State. In the north, the same thing happened. They got a lot of opportunities because of the British again, right? Before independence, a lot of Igbos had been taken to the north. Some of them when actually the people that the society itself doesn't or didn't like. People that were put down took the opportunity to work with the British, and they traveled. And so, if you also notice that a lot of the first set of Igbo leaders were born outside Igboland. Okay, so Ojukwu was born in Zungeru. Nzogu was born in Kaduna. People were born outside the place of the most, because a lot of people moved out towards the north in the first few decades of the 20th century. But here's the thing: because of that, of the fact that they now had the opportunity, they dominated everywhere. Now, let me say it this way: dominating spaces may not really be a problem, because no be you say make you become plenty, and no be you, and it's not a curse to be educated, right? The real issue is what you do because of the opportunities you now have. So, for instance, you begin to act to the people like, now we own this place, now we own this place. And if you look at the cases of the riots that happened, some were entirely the fault of the Northerners. They just wanted to look for trouble. But in many cases, it was because of what the Easterners had done. For instance, in 45, it was a speech of Oyema that caused trouble in the North. He gave the speech in Lagos. That's why I tell people that this thing you are saying on social media, when people want to respond, it's going to affect people on the ground. Oyema said something in Lagos. He said the Igbo domination of Nigeria is only a matter of time. 1945. People heard it and said from causing trouble in the North, because they didn't want to be dominated by Igbos. In fact, they didn't want to be dominated by anyone, let alone Igbos. That's one. 53 happened because of the conversation in the parliament when Anthony Nauro for Action Group moved the motion for, and I'm going longer than the answer, but I think it's an opportunity to just explain some things. Moved the motion for independence in 1956. Did not say as soon as practicable. In other words, we're not ready for independence. They were jeered at in Lagos. So in Lagos, we're like, oh, look at these people, they don't want independence, because Lagos, of course, was very politically active as far as nationalism was concerned back then in 53. These guys traveled to the north. The people began to insult them. They came for the people. Is it good? No. But sometimes you have to know how to move in another person's space. By 66, with the coup and Ironsi's kidney, they dealt with them like thoroughly. Again, unfortunate, I don't celebrate the evils that happened, but that had to happen for people to know their place. The events of May, July, August, September of 1966 in the north are terrible events that should never happen again, hopefully. But we should always ask ourselves, why did it happen? So let's go through a little of this just very fast. Number one, the coup happened, that had already happened. But it was not the coup that caused the people to start killing Igbos. After the coup came Ironsi's, arrogance, because he didn't really care about fixing stuff. He didn't do anything about those who killed other people's leaders. He didn't court-martial them. He was paying them their salaries while in prison, while in detention. He was giving them allowances. The North was watching, but they didn't do anything. And then the regular people in the North, in Kaduna and in Kano, went into the streets, into the marketplaces, into the motor parks, and in civil service, in secretariats, to tell them how it was only Nzogu that could put sense into them, telling them that they are taking over, they are now at power. These things you are seeing that these stupid people are doing, not when I say stupid people, I'm talking about the specific stupid people amongst them, not all of them, of course. We saw Phoenix, we saw Truth. Everybody cannot be stupid. But what you see, like what that lady was saying today that we just played, they were saying the exact same thing in 1966 on the streets of Kaduna. Oh, you guys don't know anything, we have taken over, carrying guns. And in case you think I'm lying, let me just recommend 2 books. Read Beckon to Serve by Shehu Shagari. Read, in fact, 3 books. Read Nigerian Civil War by John Desenjo, and then read The Tragedy of Victory by Godwin Alabi Sama. You'll see these things there. Carrying guns and cutlasses. And not only do I believe those things because they were written, but because I've seen it in 2023. It's the same cultural issue. Just be shouting, hey, we are in charge, we are King Kong. And then when the North, came up with the Northernization policy in 62, 64, a lot of people were shouting about it because they're going to displace them. But they still had a lot of people in the civil service. By 66, they were taunting people, mocking them in their land. Don't forget that part. In their own, like you are in Hausa land, you are mocking Hausa people and telling them Shine Maganin coup. You are insulting them. You are making pictures, of Sardauna and Nzogu. Nzogu was, conquering Sardauna. You are doing all of those things in their land. Guess what? They didn't do anything. Decree 34 now came in May. That was May 24, 1966 from Erosi. That was the last straw. When that happened, the way they killed people. See, I don't want evil to happen. I don't want violence in Nigeria, but this your stupidity, some people's stupidity will cause it. You can predict it. It will be like say I'm a prophet. You can predict it because every time this is what happens. That killing has not left the psyche of the average Igbo man, even if he wasn't born then. But that was not when it ended. By August, September, they started hearing news of what was happening and we already said I don't want to go through it again. You'll find the records of that in the book by A.H.M. Green. The book is called Crisis and Conflict in Nigeria. They heard news in Kaduna from Radio Cotonou about what Igbos were doing to Northerners in the East. And why did they do that? Because of course the Northerners were killing Igbo officers. But why did they do that? Because the Igbos killed their leaders in January. So they retaliated July 28, 29. The Igbo said about it, began to kill the citizens, the regular civilians. The Northerners now heard about that and now began to kill the Igbos. And let me say this, the coup took about 24 people. The first coup, January 15, 1966 coup, about 25 people. Terrible number, but I mean, that's the number. The counter coup to over 200. And about 6 to 8 of them were Yoruba people. We collect everywhere. About more than 200 people, a lot of Igbos died. Officers died. The Igbos heard about it and started killing civilians. The Northerners heard about that and started killing Igbos. Then they began to flee. Now that they are back in the north, they remember. It has never happened in Yorùbáland. That's why everybody is laughing now. And I'm hoping it doesn't, because if it does, it's going to be Tomashiba Doni Konle Fanwenyo. When Mama Tumo Jagboro ni Arubada. And I can assure you, because from the closest thing in the southwest was Osu Abiola in 93, when Igbos left Lagos, left the southwest and moved back to the east because they were afraid of violence. That's why when people call people cowards, I just laugh. There was no violence in 93. Igbos moved en masse. It's called Osu Abiola. You can literally Google it. You don't even have to read any book to get it, but you find it in the book by Max Yolon. Moved en masse back to the east. Violence never happened, no. Why? Because they have recollection of what happened in the 60s. I'm just telling people that Yoruba people are the way they are because this is the culture. It's a culture that's open. We are an urbanized people. We are urbane. The idea of having cities is not new to us, right? We've been building cities for about 1,000 years. We understand how to build cities. Think about a city of 70 to 120,000 people as at the 12th, 13th century AD. Think about a people that can build that kind of thing. And for you to build something like that, you are going to have people come from different places. So the idea of having, people from different parts of the world is not strange to us. So that's why when GRV talks about Lagos being cosmopolitan, I just laugh. It reeks of ignorance. Lagos is not the first cosmopolitan space in Yorùbáland. It's just the latest one that you are seeing. We are used to having people. We are used to, welcoming people of different, race, creed. Doesn't really matter. But we also know how to deal with people who overstep their boundaries. And I'm telling you something, with the understanding of history that I have, and which all of us can have by reading these things, you can tell what this thing on social media, what it's going to lead to. It will lead to violence. I'm not praying for it, but it will lead to it. And when that happens, and I'm saying when, because it doesn't look like anybody's going to change anything. If they change, then it will not happen. But if they don't change, it most likely will happen. That event will now change whatever happened to the Igbos in the south and in the north, that makes them to mind their business, especially in the north. When it happens in the west, it will be bloody. But I'm praying it doesn't happen. But from history, it's very clear that until something like that happens, they don't stop. But I'm hoping, I'm praying. And the reason I'm praying is because I have seen Yoruba people fight. I've seen it not just in books, I've seen it in real life. What happened with OPC? So the way we are this open and we are laughing and we are all friends and we are all one nation under God and all those nice things, and we're very sophisticated, very educated, just writing and reading books and speaking English. To bad the ọmọ tó máa pé ìkọ̀kan ṣẹlẹ̀ bí kan tó pé koríko bẹ̀ wù mọ́. So if you're Igbo, my advice is, listen, don't take this for granted. You are not living with cowards. You are living with a peace-preferring people. We're not just peaceful, we are peace-preferring. In other words, we prefer peace. No BC. All this one are jumping all over the place. That is amateur. Like, if you really want wahala, you want problem, please, let's be like they say in Yorùbáland, let's be guided. So all of that to answer your question, just simply to say that the reason Igbos are moving the way they are moving in Yorùbáland is because Yoruba people have not done to them what was done to them in the south and in the north. And I pray to God that will not happen. Because you see, one thing about quiet people or gentle people is that when they get angry, you now be like Kimoshe.